Hello, people. How you doing today? This is Lee Cole 3, and I'm here with my partner and friend, James Proctor. James, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well, and happy Thanksgiving, Lee.
Thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. And now we're in the holiday months. Everybody be safe, and thank you for helping the show grow so much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're going to discuss Michael Franzese. Behind the scenes, Michael Franzese has reached out to somebody, I can't say who, that he wanted to talk to us. And this is the first time I'm telling James. But also, there's another thing. Michael Franzese is going. So, explain to me before I play this video. Michael Franzese went on to a show today. Explain that situation.
Yeah. So what happened was on third. So today there was a uh, Anthony Ruggiano had a Thanksgiving show, pre-recorded, but it had Michael Franzese on it, and so yeah, it was about 45 minutes, I guess. But part of it involved a response to a short that we put out earlier this week that involved what Sandra Petty, the author of Sonny's biography, said about Michael not going to the funeral of Sonny Franzese. And so Michael was responding to that and then, mentioned that, a lot of people.
Others.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, James. Did we make these accusations, or did a reporter that is the investigative reporter for Newsday from Long Island? And on top of that, she has a book that has sold tens of thousands of copies on Sonny Franzese. Michael might be upset with us, but this is an investigative reporter that has come up with this information. He has not said it's not true.
Right.
He's given reasons why he didn't do it. And to be fair to Michael, and I'm going to be honest, the difference between Michael Franzese and these other people, I don't really have a disdain and nothing for him.
No, I don't either.
So we're going to give him his fair shot here. We're going to put up what he said, and then we're going to play a 15-minute. We did an hour interview on our Patreon page with
Sandra.
Author,
yeah,
with the author Sandra, and she has written the book Sonny.
Mm-hmm.
And Sandra Petty is a nice woman.
Yes,
a very honest woman, and no one's ever proved her to be a liar.
Right.
So I'm going to play this, and we don't have to play this, but we're going to play this, and we're going to let Michael get what he has to say.
Listen, Anthony, another thing too, we cleared up. I didn't go to his funeral when he died. I didn't go to his funeral because I don't want to be a center of attention there with people talking and all of that. And I was told, look, don't go, don't take attention, and you don't want any disturbances at your father's funeral. So I understood that. I said, okay. Now I went privately to visit him, obviously, and I went to the cemetery to see him. But people out there, they talk, oh, you didn't even go to your father's funeral and all of that, but they don't know. They don't understand what we had to go through. They don't get it, And I hate the fact when people try to talk to you about your personal life that they know nothing about. We all had reasons for doing what we did, and it's nobody's business why we did it. Why we had to do it, because they don't know the dynamics of our family and what went down. They don't get it. But if you're on social media, you open yourself up for that. So we got to be accepted. Listen.
Okay. And we respect him for saying what he's saying.
Right.
And we even played it, and he said much more than this.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to counter it, and we're going to put up the 15-minute segment of our interview on Patreon. And people, this interview is really good, and probably the best interview we ever did, huh, James?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, she's just a great person to talk to. It's obvious she's done this before, so she's able to answer questions off the cuff. Really, I just thought it was a great interview. Good connection, good chemistry.
Great stories about the 60s.
Okay, we'll pause this for a minute. Okay. Well, okay, so we're going to play this. It's an hour. We did an hour video. This is 15 minutes. If you want to see the rest of the video, you can go to Patreon, because we do show stuff like this, top quality stuff. But what I'm going to talk about right now is the fact that Sandra's going to come on and say what she has to say. And this is just a tip of the iceberg, what she said. And it's obvious that Michael has somehow seen that Patreon interview. It's not hard for someone to film it and send it to him. But he has seen it, because he's talked about the way he's talking. He's acting like he has seen it. So let's play this, and I'm going to stop it, and we have to say something, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Oh, one thing I like to say, Michael Franzese, when you joined forces with Sammy Gravano, you went in a whole different direction, other direction. You know, you say that you're a man of God, and God bless you, you know, if you're a man of God. But why would a man of God join forces with Sammy Gravano, who has not showed any remorse in anything he's done in his life? Not an ounce of remorse. A very bad man. Michael Franzese, you've had your show. You were at top when they all came in here. You teaming up with Sammy makes no sense because you claim to be this virtuous good guy. And then you wind up with Sammy Gravano as a partner, and then Ruggiano, a guy who's consistently caught in lies, and we'll take care of that after this. We'll show you more lies by Ruggiano, which is so easy to find. And we do this because people need to be out here doing this on a consistent basis, and that's what we are. We out here, James, consistently calling these guys out, aren't we?
Yeah. And we do the research. We go into the court records. We go into testimonies. We go into articles, books, all of that. So we don't just make it up. We make sure to cover the basis of when we counter these lies or embellishments.
Okay, here we go. We'll start this. Thank you, James. You're a woman, you're investigating, and then you go into this sleazy man's world, the mob. I mean, this is a sleazy world, let's face it.
It really is.
And then you're going in there and you're talking to people. Do you ever say to yourself, how the hell did I get involved in this?
Yes, yes, every day, especially now that I'm getting calls from people who want to do books with me. But I have to tell you, in all honesty, the Franzese world was not a sleazy world. I think some of these guys, it is a very sleazy world, but the Franzese family, they're all very articulate, they're bright, they're attractive. Any one of them could have done great things in civilian life if they had just chosen to go that route. So, and Sonny was big in the music industry. He was big in movies, and he had a lot of great stories about the 60s and the 70s. So it didn't feel sleazy to me. Afterwards, when the book came out and people started calling me, it felt sleazy. So yes, I do wonder all the time. I think, what am I doing in this world? You know, I'm about as boring as vanilla. And
I don't think so. I'm sorry.
I don't
You're
do
like Angel.
anything
You're like Angel.
interesting.
You think you are.
No. Trust me, I'm really, really boring. And how I got connected to this, I really don't understand. But what interests me in this world are really the women and how the women survive. Yes. And, you know, if you'll notice, the name on my book is SJ Petty, because my publisher didn't think that anyone would buy a mob book by a woman.
Exactly.
So
that's
why
sad. Yeah.
Initials. And well, I think he was right, because I think the majority of the buyers have been men, and I love men too, you know, and I'm perfectly happy with male buyers. But I think the untold story really is the women of the mafia, because they see everything and they are so often in the shadows.
Let me ask you, see, in my family, well, with myself and my sister, my brothers, we didn't get in, we were I was definitely threatened by my father that if I ever did drugs, I would just disappear, because he would never allow me to destroy myself and my family. Didn't these people have a fear of their father? Sonny?
No, they did not. But he did tell them don't use drugs, and he was very adamant about that. But no, they really didn't have a fear of him. And he was the one in that household who was really the steady one, which it sounds crazy. Tina was very tempestuous, and she would have these temper outbursts. And I think a lot of it was she thought she was going to live a very different life, and she thought she was going to be a true partner with her husband, and she wasn't. You know, he lied to her all the time. And so she took her frustration out on the family. So they feared her more than they really feared Sonny. They all say he was a great dad.
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
Nate, can you name? Okay, you have you.
Are you on mute?
This is where one of the things come from. So it's kind of contradictory, because today, when we just played that short, Michael Franzese was talking about how his life wasn't that glamorous with his father.
Right.
But here she's saying that they all said that the father was a good father. Sure, he was in prison, but he was one of the few gangsters that kept generating money coming into the home, even though he was in prison.
Right. Exactly.
Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Yeah, and a lot of it, at least when Michael was in that life, he helped to make sure of that. So, my understanding is that later on he wasn't necessarily, the family wasn't good about, taking care of Tina and the children. But yeah, I know that obviously Michael, when he was in that life and Sonny was away, that he made sure there was money coming in.
Okay. So I'm guessing you met a lot of people that are in the life, or talk to them on the phone. Can you tell me? Can you give me a name of a couple that have impressed you?
Well, it depends upon what you mean by impressed. The guy who made the introduction to Sonny for me was a guy named Frankie Blue Eyes. Mm-hmm. And he impressed me because he was so loyal to Sonny. He was loyal to him till the very end. And I admire loyalty. So I thought, and he really, really loved the guy. In the end, only I think it was about 75 people attended Sonny's funeral when he died in 2019. And I heard that people were told to stay away because they had decided.
Why was that? And by who were they told to stay away?
Other guys in the life, bosses told them to stay away. Well, at that point, I had written one story about Sonny talking, and
yeah, I can't hear you.
This is Frankie Blue Eyes from the Colombo family.
Okay.
It looks like he has brown eyes in this, but maybe he wore contacts. But I don't know. Just so you do know, this guy is from the Colombo family, and this is who introduced them. And this guy was very close to Sonny.
Okay.
Of course, that was a mark against him. But the other thing is, remember, he had two sons who rolled. Michael, even though Michael tries to minimize it, Michael provided a lot of very good information to authorities because he's a very smart guy. And then, of course, you have John, his youngest son, who not only wore a wire against his father, but he testified against his father in court. While saying all along, he loved his father. And that when he was 93, when Sonny was 93. And Sonny, I asked Sonny about that. And he said, I don't know. I think the drugs, because John, for many years, was a desperate.
Weren't these kids afraid of getting involved in drugs? They
were. And his daughter Gia died of a drug overdose. Yes, they were afraid. But, there's some evidence that drug and alcohol addiction may be genetic. And I think one of the grandparents may have had a problem. So, but the other thing with John is he knew he would always be protected. His parents protected him. So they had people who pulled him out of crack dens. And whenever Tina didn't hear from him for a while, she would.
And James, when we talk about John Franzese, they always had someone looking out for him when he was doing stuff in the life. People were protecting him despite him being a drug addict.
Right.
His father always had somebody looking at him. And people have to remember, John Franzese still ratted on his father, wore a wire.
Right.
And when his dad was 93 years old, he went back to prison, 93. So he basically wore wire on his father and testified against his father. And he had to be under the assumption, my father's 93, he's going back to prison for a few years, so he's probably going to die in prison. Didn't he have to have that assumption?
Yeah, I mean, he had to have thought that. I mean, who would have thought that that Sonny would have lived to be 103 or 104, depending on the birth date? And so, yeah, I mean, that's obvious. It's, there was, and for the government to, the whole thing is just an awful situation, all around. And what I'm talking about is John doing that to his father, and then the feds, wanting to, trap Sonny Franzese at an advanced age, and him being the oldest inmate in the correctional system of the U.S. Prison system.
So it kind of to show you how much the government wanted Sonny Franzese. They were willing to send him back to jail for a couple of years. They wanted him to die in prison. Would you say that's pretty accurate?
Yeah, exactly. They wanted him to die in prison. I mean, they've had a hard on Sonny Franzese since the 60s, and I totally agree with Michael and other people that it was a setup on the bank robberies. And it's just that, he rubbed people the wrong way, and he was a celebrity gangster before John Gotti. He really was. He was flashy. He was out there, and the government didn't like it.
And on the robbery that he got set up for, he felt like Carmine Persico was behind that setup also.
And that was something that was pretty fascinating to me to hear that, because, I maybe it'd been brought up before. I never realized that he thought that Persico was behind it. But I could see that to a point, because of the way that Carmine Persico was, they call him the Snake.
He was called the Snake because he tried to strangle one of the Gallo brothers. They tried to kill him.
Yeah.
After the Gallo brothers thought he was underside, so that's where he got the nickname the Snake.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, let's move on here.
Call someone and they would go pull John out. So he was always taken care of. And unlike your father, Sonny didn't tell him, look, you're on your own if you do drugs. And, maybe he should have, because he certainly didn't want him using drugs.
Oh, that's sad.
It was.
And see, now I always thought that Michael, and Marla will agree to this, Marla and I were shocked one night to find out that Michael did cooperate, but our understanding was that, according to my attorney and friend also, Elio, was that if Michael did cooperate, a whole bunch of people starting at the top, like Carmine Persico, would have went down. How come that never happened if he is a cooperator?
Because Michael was very smart. He set limits to his cooperation deal, which you normally can't do. He provided information on bosses in a lot of other cities, not New York, for example, which is, the heart of the mafia. I remember a prosecutor telling me he was surprised to hear there was a mafia in Denver, because Michael told him about the bosses there. And he also told his crew members when they were being prosecuted that he would pay for their legal fees, so they didn't have to worry about anything. Of course, he didn't. And he persuaded them all to plead guilty. So prosecutors got some notches with that. But he was pretty slick in the way he cut the deal. And, the thing about Michael is he's a smart guy, and he's a very appealing guy. He's not like one of your typical street guys. And I mean,
he was a pre-med student, wasn't he? He was a pre-med student, wasn't he?
Right, exactly. And he's the kind of guy you'd have over to your house for dinner. Some of these other guys, I sure as heck wouldn't want them in my house for dinner.
Now, did he help you? Did he cooperate in any way with you with this book?
Oh, yeah.
He did.
He did, and he told me a lot of really great stories. He was very generous with his time, and Michael and his father, they had a falling out, but they mended it in the end. Sonny even forgave John in the end. John cooperated as well.
Yeah,
And as I said, they're really an amazing family because they're so full of talent and smarts and ambition, and they're very different from your average gangster.
So Michael Franzese was kind of loud today about people going after him, James. But if you listen to this interview, it doesn't sound like he's being attacked hard. It sounds like truth is being told. He knew exactly who to snitch on, what families to snitch on, and he did it very smartly. And that's what separates him from most of the other guys.
Yeah, and I actually listened to there's a video out from Trevor McDonald from, I don't know, probably 10 to 12 years ago, and he actually talks about this. And Michael's been pretty consistent on how he approached this. He was basically trying to see what he could get out of the government without giving them much information. He gave them information that he felt wasn't that useful and all of that. And so this is just, Sandra stating what, we knew before on what those limits were. So yeah, the ones that he actually cooperated on that, that got jammed up was Norby Walters. And then I believe there was a driver, an associate driver of maybe Sonny or one of them that, got into some trouble. But yeah, none of them got in prison, but that was due to a technicality,
Yes,
as we know.
Exactly. He would have, if it wasn't for that technicality, Norby Walters was going to prison.
Yeah, Norby was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Family, I would think.
And how many of their siblings are still alive?
Yes, the Carmine, Anna, Marianne, and Lorraine are the children from his first marriage. They're all alive, and they're all in civilian jobs. None of them got into the life.
Right.
And then Michael was Tina's son from her first marriage. And then came John, Gia, and little Christine. Gia died of a drug overdose, and little Christina died of cancer.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
So
a lot of tragedy.
Wow, I didn't know that. Now, is Michael close with his, with the other siblings from Sonny's first marriage?
He's not so close with Carmine, Lorraine, or Marianne. I think he and John of them all are the closest, but even so, they don't. It's kind of sad. John told me a while back. John lives in Indianapolis. He used to be in the witness protection program. He's come out and he's not in it anymore, but he lives in Indianapolis, and he discovered at one point that Michael was in Indianapolis to give a talk and he didn't call him.
Oh,
so
wow.
I don't fully understand, and they really love each other. I mean, they don't badmouth each other at all. So maybe Michael didn't have time, but it's just kind of, and Michael's got his own family. He's busy with his own business and his own family, and so.
Now, what happened recently with Michael? Somebody died in his home from a drug overdose.
I don't know about that.
He talked about that on his podcast.
Yeah, that's what happened. There was someone that was, I believe, a family friend that was maybe close to his daughter, that might have been like a boyfriend or at least a friend, passed away from, I guess it was drugs that had fentanyl in it, and he didn't know.
Oh, that's awful. I saw that he was doing something on fentanyl, but I didn't have time to watch it, so I didn't know that. Oh, that's sad.
Sandra, I'd like to ask you something else. The other day, Michael was doing a show, and he had about 500 people in there, and he was answering whatever questions you can see. And I said, let me throw a question in there. And I was shocked because when he seen me, he goes, oh, Lee Cole's here. And my question to him was, what did you think of the book Sonny and Sandra Petty? And he said that he agreed with some of the book. There were some parts that he did not like at all. But he said, you were a nice lady. That was basically, it was like he didn't want to be like nasty about it.
Well, I appreciate that.
But there seemed to be parts of the book that did bother him. And would that surprise you?
Oh, no, I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. You know, he didn't like the funeral story. And he seems to think there was Ernie the Hawk was a hitman who was murdered, and Sonny was charged with that homicide, and he was acquitted. And I just told the story of Ernie's death and the trial. I never said Sonny did it, but I think I know because he said it, Michael thought that I was suggesting that his father killed Ernie the Hawk. And he said, but he didn't do it. And he was acquitted. So, and do I know whether or not Sonny was involved in that? I do not. I just state the facts. I'm not going to draw a conclusion there. But look, I think Michael is a really good guy in a lot of ways. I hope I haven't sounded critical of him because I don't want to sound critical. I think
you have.
Do you feel like Sandra just said, she doesn't, now she says, it seems like she's not being critical of him. She states facts. She states what her research has said.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like Michael will take it like people are being critical of him. Do you think that, James, do you think that she's being overly critical toward Michael Franzese?
No, I don't think that she's being overly critical. I mean, the thing is that anytime a biography is done, it doesn't matter who it's on, you know, no one's going to be 100% happy with it if it's done correctly. You know, and that's part of her job as an investigative reporter, especially as an investigator in this book on the life of Sonny. You know, she spoke with, I believe, over 100 different people. She went through all of these court records, a lot of documents that, you know, we can't even get a hold of because you know, they're sealed or filed away. So over 100 interviews, you know, and, you know, I read the book, I've read it a couple of times. I feel that for the most part, it's very factual. You know, I feel that it's, you know, that you're never going to have a life without, no one's perfect, right? So the thing was that, you know, she talked about the good of Sonny, the good of Michael, and then went over the issues that happened, the crimes, what happened to the family. So, and Michael himself has talked about how the family was, you know, devastated by Sonny being in prison, how it, you know, really caused a lot of destruction. So, you know, I'm not, you know, I think they're kind of saying the same thing, but, you know, Michael's just, you know, it sounds like he has a few issues with just certain parts of the biography.
Well, you know what, James, if someone wrote a book about me and if it's 20% of it is something that was good in that book, I'd be happy.
Yeah.
It sounds like 80% of this book is accurate. Mm-hmm. Michael gets mad if there's something off that doesn't really go down his road.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, true.
You say the truth. Would you consider Sonny any type of a serial killer?
It's funny. I was talking to my agent about that very subject the other day, and he said, you know, he's a serial killer. And that had never occurred to me. But I guess the definition of a serial killer is if you've killed 3 or more people. But
Sonny, there's no evidence, though, that Sonny Franzese has ever killed outside of the mob, is there?
No, there's no evidence that he's killed outside the mob. And, you know, and I don't know if it's brought up on this, but one of the things I had mentioned is a lot of these hit guys, a lot of these guys that commit pieces of work, they look at it almost as like they're in the military. It's like if you're a sharpshooter, a sniper. And so, you know, they consider it just part of being in that life. And so there's not any evidence of any, you know, rub outs that occurred out, you know, that wasn't someone involved in the life. And I think even Sonny made the comment once that I think anyone he took out deserved it or something like that. So, yeah, he always followed the rules from my understanding.
And you know, to give you an idea what type of how silent he's been, nobody has an idea whether he murdered 2 people or 100 people. They have no idea.
Yeah,
But
they don't.
he was considered a soldier. He was considered a hitman, and he rose in power. But that's what he was. If Sonny Franzese was looking for you, you had major problems, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, you did. He had a lot of, you know, he was smart, he was resourceful, you know, and a lot of this stuff happened in the, you know, you got to look at the days of Sonny. So he was born what in 1915, and he got into the mob of the 1930s, and so the records of what happened between the 30s and probably the 57, you know, late 50s, you know, who knows? I mean, there were a lot of hundreds of people getting killed, and I'm sure that Sonny took parts in it. You know, as far as a number, you know, who knows? You know, through time, things become, you know, almost a legend. You know, I've heard the number he's killed 50 people, but at the same time, you know, you have people that say, "Oh, Roy DeMeo killed 200 people." Well, is that true? Well, might be an exaggeration, might not. We don't really know.
And Sonny was very well respected by everybody in the family, except maybe Persico. People say, "Oh, him and Persico got along," but it's obvious they did not get along. That's just a myth. But the reality is, he survived all those years, even in prison. If they wanted to get to you, they would get to you. And but people feared him and respected him. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and he was used as a you know, during the war, the Gallo War, he was used to help to try to bring the people together and to, you know, bring peace. And so he was always looked at as someone that that was level-headed, someone that was smart and everything. But as far as the Persicos, they felt threatened by anyone that was outside, you know, their family. Yeah. So even Mush Russo, he was related to Persicos. So I think there was always issues with anyone that wasn't totally. I think Carmine Persico was easily threatened. He was very concerned because, you know, the truth is that Sonny could have probably took over that family. You know, if he wanted to, he had that much power. And so
if he was in prison, they didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
As we know, the Persicos, they were involved in some wars in the Colombo family, and they were known to kill, and they had a guy on their payroll that was probably the most ruthless killer ever, Scarpa. So, you know, yeah. Okay, let's go. We're going to finish the rest of this, and then we'll move on. And it's obvious that he's killed 3 or more people, right? Would you?
He has, and look, there's no justification for murder, but I don't think of him as a serial killer because I think he killed people because he was either ordered to do so by the bosses. He felt he had to do it because of the code he lived by. Maybe I don't know if he did some just because of business. That would be pretty cold, you know, if you thought they got in the way of business. But
do you feel that these men know what they get into when they get into this?
Yes. Yeah, okay. I absolutely do.
Right.
And I think they think, and I've talked to enough of these guys to believe this, they all think that nobody's going to betray them and nobody's going to hurt them.
Yeah.
And, you know, the reality is it's a life of betrayal. You have to watch your back all the time. And that's a hard life. That's a really, really hard life. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. That's the end of that part. Let me get that off here. Okay. So people, that's 15 minutes of the hour-long interview. And as you can see, that was very interesting. And the whole thing's very interesting, and other things come out that bothered Michael in the interview. Besides that, many more things. But were you happy with that interview? Did you see where that was getting aggressive toward Michael at all?
No, I didn't think it was aggressive. Obviously, I'm not in Michael's place, so I don't know, all of his feelings on it. But yeah, I don't feel it was aggressive. I believe too, he's got a very supportive, loyal wife. I think she's very influential in his life, and I think she's very much, if someone attacks him or it's perceived as an attack, that she also will, get involved in, and defend him. And so, yeah, I didn't see this as an attack. I just saw it as, I thought it was, very honorable, very honorable interview of Sonny Franzese. I felt that it was that. I thought that she wasn't really critical of Michael. The funeral thing, I have some thoughts on that as well, but yeah, I didn't see it as overly critical.
So let's move on to Anthony Ruggiano. And being that Anthony seems to be every place lately, he loves everybody. He loves Sammy. He loves Michael. And but I want to ask you. We've done some research on. Explain to us the statement that that Ruggiano has made on Vito Scaglione.
Yeah. So what he said was that Vito Scaglione was the one that pulled the trigger on Frank Burke, Jimmy Burke's son. So we know that in 1987, in May of '87, that Frank Burke was shot and killed outside of a bar. And then we know from the news reports that a guy named Tito Ortiz was the one that got arrested. And but then we have the story from about 6 months ago where Anthony Ruggiano, and during my research on the Scaglione story, because there's two brothers, I came across what Anthony Ruggiano said. So basically, what Anthony's saying that is totally contradictory to pretty much every other source is that one, that was Vito Scaglione that pulled the trigger on Frank Burke, and the second is that and
he's saying that the barbershop murder of him was because of the murder of Frank Burke, who was Jimmy Burke's, from the Goodfellas, the character played by Robert De Niro, that character's son. At that time, he was in prison. He was put away by that time. And so basically, right. Scaglione, he had the barbershop, and he was murdered. 3 guys walked in with guns, and they killed him. And the one thing he said, first of all, he said he was shot with machine guns.
Yeah, he said it was Uzis, but according to the
Ruggiano said that he was shot by Uzis. Explain to me why this is wrong.
Yeah, so they found 380. So when on the crime scene, there were spent shells. There were 380s. And so an Uzi can be different calibers, but the typical Uzi is a 9mm. There are rare occasions, but there was never one that was a 380. And so these were 380. He was shot with the 380 is what it was, not an Uzi.
Did it say anything about him being shot with Uzis?
No.
Okay. And did Ruggiano say he was shot with Uzis?
Yeah, that's what he said. It was an Uzi.
Okay. So we'll bring that part. And see, this is the part. Okay. And another thing, he said that when this murder happened, the guy that got killed in the barbershop came to him and talked to him about it. And he also said that at the Shamrock Bar, the murder went there, that the murderer came to him and talked to him about it. So are these guys in the streets that are committing these murders? Why does it seem like they're always running to Ruggiano? Is he like the expert on saving people that have murdered people? I mean, why in his stories is he involved in these stories, and why are they always running to him to save them?
Well, and what's funny is there's another story. There was I'm reading up on Charles Carneglia, and so what's interesting there, and this is in court documents, is that what Anthony Ruggiano said is that Charles was said to have killed a guy that was at a bar, and the guy was an associate of the Nicky Carrazzo's crew. It was Fat Andy's crew, but Nicky Carrazzo had been made. And anyway, he was saying there was a big sit down between Gene Gotti and also with Nicky Carrazzo, and that they put a hit out on Charles Caniglia. And there's no evidence that Charles Caniglia ever had a hit put out on him. And then what he said is that the hit was put out, and that this guy that was wanting to take vengeance on his friend that was killed came to Anthony Ruggiano, and that Ruggiano said, "Oh, well, this Charles Caniglia guy, you got to be careful with him. He's a tough one," or something like that. And then he repeated the story in court in the Carneglia trial, and law enforcement actually went to the prosecutors and said, "Hey, this story's not true. That's not what happened." And the reporter Anthony De Stefano actually mentioned it in his book about Carneglia, about that the story that Ruggiano said wasn't true. But this is a third instance of where someone came to him about a hit.
Okay, James, so just to break this down a little bit. So here's this murder that happened. This is another murder.
Another murder, not the Vito Scaglione murder. This was different.
Okay, so once again, he's involved in another murder. He testifies. He's going to testify in court, or did he testify?
He did testify. This was the Charles Carneglia trial.
And then the police department came forward and said, "Wait a minute, this didn't happen. He's lying."
Right. They said that's not what happened.
Explain what happened at that point.
Yeah, no, I mean, just basically they said it was, they just removed the statement saying that wasn't the story. And so the thing was trying to say there was a hit on Charles Caneglia that was put out there, and that never happened. And so there were other informants. What happened is there's multiple informants involved in these cases, and so that's not what happened. And so I think he heard the story from his father, and he's repeating a story. But what he did was he's saying he met with the guy that was supposed to take out Charles Caneglia, and that never happened.
Okay, so let's see. He met with the guy that was supposed to kill Charles Caneglia. He met with the
and could give him advice on it, advice on stuff.
And then another guy came for advice, was the guy that got killed in the barbershop, Vito.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Then also in the Shamrock, he was involved in that guy turning himself in, or he was doing. He was involved in that.
Right.
So we got three main big things here, big moments in the mob. That a guy who's not made, a guy who is barely an associate, is saying, and at that time he's known as being a drug addict on the street. Mm-hmm. He's saying that he was involved in all this. I mean, is there any? This is Sal Polisi all over again. They're involved in everything. The most amazing thing, Sal Polisi and him were on the street at the same time. Have they ever talked about even meeting each other on the street?
Yeah, no. And I think one thing we got to remember too is that Ruggiano, I mean, obviously he knew who John Gotti was, but let's go back into the 70s.
He knew people. There's no doubt.
Yeah, he knew that. But in the 70s, understand the way that it worked with the Queens, with the Gambino family. There were two big crews in Queens. You had Fat Andy's crew, which Nicky Carrazzo was part of, and what Anthony Ruggiano was part of. But then you had the Carmine Fatico crew. That was the other big one, and that became the prominent crew in Queens. And when Carmine Fatico and Daniel Fatico, the brother, went to prison, they actually had John Gotti made it. He was an acting boss, and he wasn't even made yet. He was an acting capo, is what I'm trying to say, of that crew. And so you had two crews, and so the crew that was part of, that had Ruggiero that had Gene Gotti, the Corneglia brothers. That was all that Fatico crew. That was all the crew that John Gotti was an acting capo of. Anthony Ruggiano was not part of that crew. He was part of an associate from time to time with his dad's crew, with where Lee was at, where the guy, that's where he was at. It wasn't the Gotti or Fatico crew.
So, but Ruggiano will make you believe that he was involved heavily with both crews.
Right. Yeah. And he was in Queens. He went to the Shamrock. He went to the different clubs, 101st. He did that stuff, but he was more associated with Nicky Carrazzo and those folks, not John Gotti, not the Corneglia brothers, none of that.
And once again, another guy informant that sat down and was rejected from some of his testimony. But
yeah,
James, it seems like these guys like him, they were something on the street. They were known on the street. They did some things on the street. Was he a bookie? Was he a loan shark? Probably.
Yeah.
But he did that. He didn't do that with John Gotti. And but he's all these things. But at the same time, he's a raging drug addict, and he wants us to believe that he was involved. He had a big part in these three major murders.
Right.
Two of those major murders were never even talked about in the 302s. So when you sit down with 302s, you got to talk about everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically his part in it was that people would come to him and talk to him. He would be at a bar and they would talk to him, just like Vito Scaglione. He was the thing that doesn't make sense on that. And again, that's the barbershop one. He's his brother-in-law was Dominic Cataldo. He's a big deal with the Colombos. He was a guy that shot Jerry Papa, and so killed Jerry Papa. And that guy was a hitman you didn't want to mess with. But by 85, the guy was in prison for 35 years. That's what I can find. And so supposedly he met with Vito, and Vito said, "Oh yeah, my brother-in-law Dominic Cataldo took care of it." And what he's saying, talking about Anthony saying that Dominic Cataldo set up his brother-in-law Vito to get shot.
But the thing is Cataldo wasn't even on the street.
He wasn't on the street. And then if it's true that Vito actually shot the Frank Burke, then it sounds like an innocent guy that gets
that's what it would have
trouble
to be
with Tito Ortiz.
Either someone's lying, but we're going to explain why this could be possible, because here's where because we're going to come to the point where Scarpa Senior, Greg Scarpa.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that a lot of evidence that he gave were lies, tons of them. He used to feed the FBI whatever he felt just to keep him off his back.
Right.
Frank Burke's death and Frank Burke, once again, is the son of Jimmy Burke, and as was a result of a fraudulent drug transaction. He sold cocaine with flour to a drug dealer who later killed him. The drug dealer named Tito Ortiz was arrested for Burke's murder. Now he's trying to say Tito Ortiz was also the nickname of Vito Scaglione. Is there any evidence of that?
No, but he's saying that basically that Vito Scaglione's nickname was Tito. I don't know if that's true. I haven't heard that, but that's what Anthony's saying. And
here's the real Tito. Tito Ortiz was born in 1940. This is the guy. There's a newspaper of him being arrested by the cop.
That I have. Yep.
Tito was born in 1940 and lived at 10529 75th Street in Ozone Park. He died in 2004. On August 6, 1987, sources advised that the hit on Vito Scaglione in September was a retaliation. For the murder of Frank Burke. The source, Greg Scarper Sr., the source, advised that Scaglione was actually the one that committed the murder and not Tito Ortiz, although someone else was charged. Tito Ortiz went to jail for this and served a long sentence for this murder. So why are we supposed to believe? Were the cops that stupid? They just put Tito, the drug dealer, in jail and did this guy get killed in the bar? Without a doubt, but nobody knows what it was for. It could be 1,000 things. Back then, you had that 1 year, you had 12 dead bodies pop up from mob wars in Queens.
Oh, that was a horrible year as far as a lot that went on. And then, the Scaglione's like his brother Frank. He just disappeared day 2. Maybe he's dead, or maybe he went back. I think he just went back to Sicily.
Went back to Sicily and just disappeared because of the war going on in the street. And he was involved in another killing that he had his own issues with.
Yeah.
But see, people, we're not saying who's right or wrong here. What we're saying is they just present what they want to present. But the fact of the matter is, Tito Ortiz went and got sentenced and served prison time for this murder. That we know. We know that he died in 2004. And we're going to get more stuff. We're going to talk more on this. But this is what the problem is when you guys listen to Ruggiano. He has so many stories. The guy probably has an exciting life without making up all this crap, but he wants to be involved in everything. Is that what it seems like? Yeah,
to me that's what it seems like. And so, and like I said, a lot of the stuff, the other day when we talked about it, I'm glad you were able to uncover some of this other stuff that you presented today.
Well, I just got that. Tony B came up with that stuff, and as you know, Tony B is a great researcher. And see, that's one thing we got on this show. We have great researchers. We're not saying and we're taking our time and coming up with the whole story because we're not sure what the whole story is, do we?
Right, because there's a lot of stuff like I'm trying to find, some newspaper articles or something, some prison records of the Tito Ortiz. I'd like to know exactly when he got out of prison. I know he's supposedly sent for, it was a second-degree murder or that type of thing. I did know the story. I'd read the story, heard the story that it was a drug deal gone bad, that there was flour, basically coke with flour in it. And, I'd heard that. I still don't know why Vito Scaglione was involved, but we know Tito was a drug dealer. We do know that part true. We do know that Tito
may have been involved with Tito. Tito may have been involved with the murder, but he's not the one that went to he was gunned down at the barbershop for something.
Tito was, yeah.
He was convicted of the murder, convicted in front of a jury. So if people are trying to say that he was innocent, you figure in a trial something would have came up to show he was innocent.
Yeah. I think we're missing some stuff that's still out, that's just, it's very hard. We're going back, about 40 years nearly. And so some of that stuff's hard to uncover and then it's still the government to this day. There's a lot of records still sealed and 302s that we still are trying to get our hands on, that we do these Freedom of Information Acts, and it takes forever for the judges to even look at that. And then they still try to say that, oh, well, this guy's still alive. And so because one person's alive, then they're not going to unseal it. Yeah. So it's, but I just don't think his story is correct. I just don't believe what.
Oh no, there's definitely lies put in this story. BS. Yeah. Please, people, that interview that you just seen, if you want to see the whole thing, go to our underneath this video. There will be a link to go to the Patreon and join up. You get the first week free. What do you have to lose? And you can see the whole story.
Yeah.
And so you just go to Angel Gotti, My Father's Daughter. The Patreon link will be below, and then you can watch that. And also, please subscribe, hit the like and the reminder bell. And if you want to help with the channel, help yourself. If not, we totally understand. And then also, you can subscribe to our wrestling channel. And we will be doing a show tomorrow. But you can subscribe to our, we'll be doing, we're going to be doing a show tomorrow. Please subscribe to our wrestling channel. And we have 2 websites. And that's www.realmobcontent.com or www.grabanocrimefamily.com. We also are coming out with our own brand of T-shirts, and they're designed and they're going to be specially done. They're not going to be any garbage. And T-shirts and hats and other stuff. And we'll have our own. And once we put them up, we'll let you know. So you can go to our websites, check them out. If you like them, fine. This show has been doing great, James, and we owe a lot of thanks to a lot of people.
We do.
And the second half of 2023 has been wonderful for this channel, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, definitely. And, just thanks everyone for your support and, continuing to watch and comment and do all that stuff. I love the engagement.
Well, James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll have much more, and we appreciate everything. Take care.
Take care, everyone.